Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. From Citywide College, you are welcome back to another class for the fourth week for ss1, and the subject is government. The period is lesson 2, and the topic is checks and balances, and subtopic is similarity between separation of power and checks and balances. My name is Mr. Isaac, and my colleague is Mr. Idowu from the boarding college. May Allah ease the understanding during and after this presentation. Ameen. The content: checks and balances. This is a system that emphasizes the power of any of the organs of government to check, amend, and veto activities of other branches of government. In other words, checks and balances maintains that the powers that belong to each of the organs of government enable each of them to check, amend, and veto activities of other organs of government. In other words, because of the powers conferred on the executive, for instance, it can check activities of the judiciary, and of course the legislature, because of the power conferred on it, can check activities of the executive, vice versa. That is, powers conferred on each of the three organs of government, that is the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary, restrain others from exerting too much power. When there is checks and balances, it means the powers conferred on each of the organs of government will limit. Each of the organs of government will limit their powers. Powers that belong to each of the organs of government will be limited, will be restrained when there is a checks and balances. So those powers will be checked by any of the organs of government. For example, the executive, because of the powers conferred on it, can check, can reduce, can limit, can prevent the legislature, for example, from being too powerful. And of course, because of the power conferred on judiciary, it can limit the power of the legislature, vice versa. It can be said more importantly that checks and balances calls for separation of powers among the three organs of government. In other words, when there is checks and balances, the powers are separated among the three organs of government will be established. So without checks and balances, we can't talk about separation of powers among the three organs of government. Checks and balances curtails excessive use of powers. It ensures orderliness and efficiency. It respects human rights. It prevents dictatorship, and it controls powers among the three organs of government. That is to say, when there are checks and balances, each of the organs of government will be prevented from using too much power, or from having or from exercising too much power. And of course, it will ensure orderliness in such a government, and such a government will be efficient. That is to say, the running of the government will be normal, will be okay. Checks and balances also respect human rights. So without checks and balances, rights of the citizens will not be respected. It prevents dictatorship. In order for us not to have a dictator as the head of the executive, for example, as the president, there should be checks and balances. When there is no checks and balances, there will be someone who will be ruling without minding the opinion of the people or what the constitution says. It controls powers among the three organs of government. That is the one there. That's the last one there. One of the reasons behind having checks and balances is to control the powers that belong to the three organs of government. And there is checks and balances. Powers that belong to the executive will be controlled. When there is checks and balances, powers that belong to the judiciary will be controlled. When there is checks and balances, powers that belong to the legislature will be controlled. There is therefore similarity between checks and balances and separation of powers. So, having said that, separation of power brought about checks and balances. Checks and balances calls for separation of powers. So there is now similarity between the two. A similarity between checks and balances and separation of powers, as each of the two ensures that no branch or no organ of government controls too much power. I need to say the work or the main thing, the objective of the two, either the balance, checks and balances, or separation of power, is to ensure that the powers that belong to each of the organs of government are not too much. Here are some examples of how these three organs of government maintain or exercise separation of powers as well as checks and balances. The legislative arm, number one, the legislative arm makes laws. The legislative arm makes laws, while the president, within the executive, vetoes those laws. That's number one. The legislative arms, the lawmakers, they make laws. When they make laws, the president will approve or disapprove those laws. Number two, the legislative arm makes laws, but the judiciary can declare those laws unconstitutional. That's number two. When the lawmakers have made laws, the judiciary, the judges, the lawyers can say that those laws are constitutional or those laws are not constitutional. That's number two. The president in the executive, number three, appoints people to hold top public offices, while the legislature approves or disapproves such appointment. That's number three. Number four, the legislative arm makes laws, while the judiciary interprets those laws. Number five, the executive prepares a budget and public expenditure, but the legislature approves them. Number six, the judiciary has power to punish offenders of the state, but the president within the executive has power to pardon such offenders. Number seven, the legislative arm makes laws, but the executive directs the execution. Now, the explanation. Having said that, there is similarity between the two, as in separation of powers and checks and balances. So the examples below are how they work together, how they come into play among the three organs of government. So what are the things, or how do they behave? How do they interrelate among the three organs of government? For example, number one, the legislative arm makes laws while the president within the executive vetoes those laws. The activity to make laws, the power to make laws belongs to the president within the executive. The executive arm makes laws, and the president within the executive vetoes those laws. In other words, the lawmakers are to make laws, and the laws are made can be approved or disapproved by the president. If the president says yes, then the laws are okay. If the president says no, the laws are not okay. The laws will be rubbish. Number two, the legislative arm makes laws so that the judiciary can declare those laws unconstitutional. Laws are made by the lawmakers can be declared constitutional or unconstitutional by the judiciary. So the power to make laws belongs to the legislative arm of government, while the power to declare those laws constitutional or unconstitutional belongs to the judiciary. You can see that there are two things there: making laws and declaring those laws either constitutional or unconstitutional. To make laws, the power to do that belongs to the judiciary. To say the law or to consider those laws constitutional or unconstitutional, that power to do that belongs to the judiciary. The legislative arm to make laws, the judiciary is to declare the laws constitutional or unconstitutional. I see those things there. The activity of making laws is checked by declaring those laws either constitutional or unconstitutional. Number three, the president and the executive arm appoint people to hold top public offices, while the legislature approves or disapproves such appointments. The president, for example, appoints the people as ministers, the governor appoints the people as commissioners and what have you. And those appointees, they are to be approved, they are to be endorsed by the lawmakers. When the lawmakers they do that, it means that the activities of appointing the people to hold public offices done by the president is checked and balanced by the lawmakers. So that is that's another way how checks and balance and separation of powers come into play among the three organs of government. Number four, the legislative arm makes laws. Why the judiciary interprets those laws? Laws are made by the lawmakers are to be interpreted by the judiciary. The lawyer, the judges will interpret laws are made by lawmakers. Lawmakers are to make laws. That's the power they have. The power to interpret those laws does not belong to them. That power belongs to the judiciary. Number four, the executive prepares a budget and public expenditure, but the legislature, the legislative arm of government approves them. So the executive, for example, the president within the executive is to prepare a budget, expenditure, what to be spent on the people over a year has to be prepared by the president and to be forwarded to the lawmakers at the federal level, and the lawmakers will approve the budgets. If the lawmakers are okay with the budget, so that's it. So the budget will be executed. If the lawmakers are not okay with the budget, there are some questions that the president is to answer as regards the budget. Then the passage of the budget or execution of the budget will be hanging. That's another way how checks and balances or separation of power comes into play among the three organs of government. Number six, the judiciary has power to punish offenders of the state, but the president within the executive has power to pardon such offenders. So the lawmakers, the judiciary, the judges, the lawyers, the Ministry of Justice, the courts, and what have you, can punish offenders of the state. When such offenders have been found guilty of the offense, when they punish those offenders, the president has, or after punishing those offenders, the president has the power to pardon such offenders. Number seven, the legislative arm makes laws, but the executive directs their execution. So the executive, for example, the president, the governor, they are to execute the laws. So after the lawmakers have made those laws, when the laws have been made by the lawmakers, so the executive, the president, the governors, will execute, direct the execution of the law. You can see there are two things there: lawmaking and directing the execution of the laws. So the power to make laws belongs to the lawmakers, and the power to execute those laws belongs to the executive. I don't think there's separation of power, and of course checks and balances. So the executive is checking the activity or the power of the legislative arm of government. Those are the ways or the two: separation of power and uh, checks and balances come into play um, among the three organs of government. By and large, it is evident that there is a need for either separation of powers or checks and balances in any political construct of any country. So there's a need for separation of powers and, of course, checks and balances in any political construct in any country. So absence of separation of powers and checks and balances in any political configuration of any country makes such a government unconstitutional, undemocratic, or difficult to run. As I said, the last paragraph, there is an interconnection between the two, and of course, absence of either of the two makes government unconstitutional, undemocratic, and difficult to run. So, if a government is to be democratic, to be constitution driven, the government is to be easy to run. There is a need for separation of power and, of course, checks and balances. The two work together. So there is no how a government can be run without uh, having separation of powers and checks and balances. So absence of the two, absence of checks and balances and separation of powers will make a government inefficient, wicked, and difficult to run. Of course, a government does not base does not rely on checks and balances and the separation of power. It's not democratic because there will be a dictator who will rule without minding what the constitution says or the opinion of the people. So that is that about separation of powers and checks and balances. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala easy understanding. Me, yourself, Allah for your rapt attention. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.